I'm going to talk through the mic because we are going to record this evening. And for anyone that's not here that wants to listen to it, he's going to make some CDs. So those will be available if you know someone, if you have a daughter or a son who has kids or whatever, and you'd like them to see it. It'll be available. So first of all, my name is Linda Bradford, and I am the Executive Director at the Children's Alliance Center in Mineral Wells. It serves the entire county, Palo Pinto County. I'm going to give you a brief description of what we do and what brought us to come here to talk to you this evening. So we are the first responders when any child in our county, and when I say a child, 17 years old and under, makes an outcry of any type of physical abuse and make an outcry of sexual abuse. We also receive every single hotline report that goes into the state when people call the CPS hotline, okay? If somebody goes to the police department to report sexual abuse, it comes straight to us. We have an MOU with the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department, Cook's Children's Hospital, CPS, the DA's office, the County Attorney's office. They are all our team. And so when we have an interview, which is one of the things we do, and Sheree's going to talk about all of our services in a minute, but every single one of those folks come to our building, and we do closed interviews with the children. So what brings us here? The lack of knowledge in the community, in the world, as to what is going on at this time. I've been where I've been now for 5 years. I worked at the school for 32 years and thought I knew everything about what was happening. In actuality, I don't know everything that's happening, and I still don't know because it changes every day, and things surprise us every day in what we see. I'm going to tell you right now, you may be uncomfortable with some things you hear tonight. And I will tell you from the legislature all the way down, they say people need to get uncomfortable because people need to know what's going on, because these are our kids and we all love them. And even though they're invincible, there are people out there that are after them, and they know how to do it way better than we know how to do it, and we can't stay ahead of it. Social media, Sheree's going to talk about that a lot tonight, is a big part of the problem. So please, if you're uncomfortable, just know that we're doing it for that reason. David had invited us to speak with the youth. We came down and gave a presentation to them. David was like, everyone else needs to hear this. It's so important that the Texas legislator, there are CACs. We're not regulated by Palo Pinto County. We're regulated by the state. We're written in the family code as to what we do and how we do it. And this past year, the state of Texas legislature put an extra $20 million in our already funded budgets to make sure that we get to continue the work that we do at our centers across the state, because the numbers had risen so much, there weren't enough of us to go around. And so with that extra money, we then hire the people that we have to hire, which brings me to Sheree. Sheree Patterson was one of the original founders, because each community, if you want to do this, you have to become a 501c3. She was one of the original. There were 5 women, I believe, and a couple of gentlemen. And it actually became active in 2013, began doing interviews, I believe, finally in 2015 with our own interviewer. I'm the executive director, and I'm also an interviewer when our current interviewer is not available or whatever, so I've done that. Sheree, this past year, with the extra monies that we received, we knew we needed to do community awareness. And so I used to be the one that went out and did that with every other thing, but Sheree is a great asset to us. She will do a presentation to anything that'll sit down for 2 seconds and listen to her. She's been invited to the state park to talk to the rangers out there, because that's a perfect place for people to be in and out. We've been to all the schools, so we do appreciate you sitting here and listening to us and going from there. So I am going to turn it over to Miss Cherie Patterson, and she is going to begin the show, and then I'm going to try not to be rude, but I tend to butt in every so often when I remember a story or something like that. And when we give you a story tonight, the story you hear is a Palo Pinto County story. It's not going to be something from Kansas or California or New York. It's going to be a case that happened in Palo Pinto County. Okay, Cherie.
Okay, so I'm Cherie. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. I'm not used to talking on mic, so I may be way too loud for this because I'm typically not one that has to be told to speak up. So I'm going to have to try and get used to this a little bit. My husband and I have been married for like 35 years. I hate to say that in front of him. He's here somewhere. And we've lived in this community. We lived in Santo when we first married. And he was born and raised in Mineral Wells, and so we've lived there the rest of our lives. So I'm very familiar with our community and what happens here and the way our children are raised and what we hold very dearly to all of us. So tonight I'm going to talk to you a little about child abuse. That'll cover sexual abuse and neglect, emotional abuse, physical abuse. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the age of consent because that is something that all of our teenagers really need to know. Nobody wants to be prosecuted, and you especially don't want your 19-year-old to be prosecuted. We're going to talk a little bit about sexting and how that's working with the law now and where that started from. We're going to talk quite a bit about social media. It is an onslaught every single day to your children. Every device they pick up has got it on it, and so you all need to know how to work through that and kind of what to monitor. And then we're going to talk about some trafficking and what that looks like in Palo Pinto County. Because when you think of trafficking, a lot of times we think that's happening somewhere else, much less in the state of Texas. But y'all need to know what it looks like in your county, in your neighborhood. So, one of the things that we'd like all of you to know right off the bat is that we're not CASA. Both of them are 501c3s. They both do extraordinary things for children, but they are completely different nonprofits. CASA works on the civil side for the children. They go into the court. They're assigned to a child's case when they're going into foster care, and they follow that case and what's going on in that child's family life and report it to the judge so that he can make a good decision while that child is in DFPS care. So what we do is on the criminal side, we have children, our doors are always locked. We only work with law enforcement agencies, CPS, and the DA's office. And at any given time, you can't just walk in or make an appointment. That's only done through our agencies that we work with every day. And so we work on the criminal side. Like Linda said before, we're more like a first responder in the sense that when a child abuse is called into the state, we immediately get that intake and then go to work on with each agency depending on who needs to be on that case in particular. So the services that we provide out of our CAC. And when I teach you about these services, I want you to know that this service, although we're located in Mineral Wells, we work extremely hard to make sure that our entire county is aware that these services are provided free to any of them that comes into our office. So we do forensic interview. We have a trained forensic interviewer that comes in with a child. She's taught to ask children open-ended questions in a manner that you can better get the information that you need without stopping a child in mid-sentence so that it's easier for them to prosecute. Our product is that disc. When that child is interviewed, it goes onto a disc. We hand it over. It's then property of law enforcement. We hand that over to them, and then they go on to investigate the case. So that product's never kept at our office, but it is used we are a tool for the DA's office to prosecute. Family advocacy, when a family comes in, their non-offending caregiver can usually brings them to the CAC, and they come in and they receive information on VOCA services and any kind of information they can do to help the family get through this extremely stressful time in their life. Not only is it very stressful for the child and what they're going to do, what they're trying to give information on that is so hard to talk about, but it's also extremely stressful for the parents who are trying to help their child get through that process. And so our family advocate is trained to be able to assist those families and to help follow the case and give those families, as the case progresses, give those families that information on where the case is at any given time. I happen to also be the MDT coordinator, which means when I go into work every day, I get that statewide intake email. I look at the agencies that are going to be involved, and then I contact those. We give them a little while to get themselves together and go to work that day, and then I contact them, and we start to coordinate who's going to go out and see the child. Are they going to screen the child? What exactly is happening in the home? And so my job on a daily basis is to work with law enforcement, whether it be the police department in Mineral Wells or the sheriff's department that works throughout the county. So we work on a daily basis together along with CPS. The CPS investigators, we only have 5 in our county right now, and so they are extremely busy. So we really try to coordinate on a regular basis so that they are able to get their job done as well as connect with law enforcement, and that's what I kind of do together for them. We also have therapy services that is kind of new to our center. It's trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. Linda might want to speak to a little bit about this. We have recently received some funding, like she talked about, that it enables us to provide therapy service for every child that comes through our center. Now, oftentimes, those services are not taken, and we hate that to happen, but we do everything that we can to get the child in along with the family in order to work on some of these therapy services. Linda?
So last year, we didn't have the funding to do therapy, so we would have a child that would come in and tell us about these horrible things that happened to them, and then out the door they went. So they had no way to process anything. So with that funding that we received, we did hire a full-time LPC. Her caseload, she told me today, she can take 2 more kids and she's going to be full. We will do something about that. It's free to all of our clients. If we have to hire somebody else, we'll hire somebody else. There's only 5 of us that work at our building. And so it's a lot of work for everybody. Everybody's kind of cross-trained. But the therapy piece, we believe right now, other than what we're doing, is probably one of the most important things we can do for our kids.
Okay, so the next thing we do is we have medical services. When a child has had skin-to-skin contact with someone, they need to go over to Cook's for a SANE exam. It's a sexual assault exam, and Cook's is trained to do that, and they come monthly to our case meetings that we talk about, MDT meetings, and they provide information that no one else could get from some of the exams that they do. So like Linda mentioned before, we have a MOU with them, and they are equally as much a partner in this working organization as law enforcement or CPS. They work with us regularly on a daily basis for any of the children that come through. So we also have a multidisciplinary team, investigation and case review. The multidisciplinary team is in fact the agencies that I've talked to you about. And they come together on a monthly meeting, and we sit down and case review every single child that's been through the center. And then we talk about any ongoing investigation that may still be going. And then we also discuss some of the things that are sitting with the DA at the time. So we always kind of track each case from the beginning, hopefully, to the very end. And everybody sits down there. And what it's designed to do is to not only open up, before they had children's advocacy centers, there was a silo effect. And so CPS may have gone out and spoken to a child and taken some pictures, and they go on and do their policy and procedure because that's really the way CPS is designed to work. However, law enforcement may go out and talk to the family or see somebody, and they had no idea that CPS had some pictures that they really could have used for evidence. And so what it happens now is when you have a children's advocacy center, it funnels it all into one location so that everybody is following the same memorandum of understanding, so that they have agreed, everybody that's at the top of those food chains have agreed, in this county with these people, this is how these cases will be handled. And so we come monthly to sit down and discuss those cases. It also allows some of our newer investigators or other law enforcement agencies that haven't worked on a case, say sex trafficking or something like that, that for them to get information from other investigators that have maybe previously worked on a case like that. So it's a lot of good sharing information. And again, I do community outreach. We really feel that prevention is better than prosecution. And so I will speak to 2 or 20 or 200. It doesn't matter. It is so important that we get this information into our parents' and our grandparents' hands and to our kids' hands. If they knew that they could be prosecuted for some of the things that they do, that they don't really have a full thought process about how it could be handled or what could happen with it, then they would probably make some different decisions. So I think it's really important that we get out into the community and educate as best we can. So when a child needs to, or when somebody decides to make a call to CPS hotline, everybody calls the same hotline number, and this is it. It's in Austin. This is called a statewide intake. And it doesn't matter whether you are CPS or you're law enforcement. If you need to call in, oftentimes when law enforcement goes out on, like a car wreck or family domestic violence or whatever, and there's a child involved, they have to go back to the office and call the same number and give the same kind of intake. Now, there are 2 ways you can make an intake. You can call in and give information, and it's always very important if you can give the names and dates of birth. With an address, it'd be great, but a lot of times that's not available to you. Or you can get online and also do it online, too, at the DFPS website. Anyway, so either way, a lot of times it's better if you talk to them in person, because some of the things that you type out will be construed one way or the other. And so it's just, either way, call that number. So CPS gets that statewide intake. When that email gets shot out to the appropriate county and the appropriate CPS department, it also goes to us. And if law enforcement is involved, it goes to them as well. If it's not a matter that involves a child in the home, say a child has been sexually abused by somebody in a different county or wherever that they had seen over spring break or summer or whatever, then it's called an INR, and it'll just go to the CAC and to law enforcement, because the child is not in the home and the problem is not within that. So when an intake is called into the state, it gets a priority number. It's a P1, P2, or PN. A P1 means that they have to have somebody from the investigator go out and see a child within 24 hours. They have to put their eyes on them. And then if it's a P2, that moves to 72 hours. And then a PN usually means that they're either going to investigate that a little more, and it may go to an alternative response. It's called a priority none. Typically, those things have either been priorly investigated, or it doesn't meet the level of abuse, which is unfortunate at times, but they have a lot of work. And if it does meet a PN, then it just doesn't meet the level to have somebody go out. So we're going to talk a little bit about sexual, physical, emotional, and neglectful abuse. So today, there's 175 Texas children. Today, there'll be 175 children that are victims of abuse. 7.4 million children residing in Texas. That would be 740,000 child victims of abuse. And we're not talking about nationwide. We're talking about Texas. So Texas law requires that any person that suspects that a child has been abused or neglected must immediately make that report. And that's the law. So sexual abuse is kind of defined in several different ways. I'm not going to read all of these over for you. I think y'all have a handout. Do they have that handout? Okay, I think they have a handout of some of this that you can kind of read over later. When abuse is called in, and it has to meet one criteria or the other, sexual abuse is usually moved up, especially on a children's advocacy center line. If children come into our center, they have to meet a certain protocol, and that means that they either have to be severely abused or sexually abused. So we don't see any of the kids who have emotional abuse from domestic violence, or typically neglect would have to be severe neglect. I think we've had some of those in our county that y'all might be aware of in the years past, but we haven't seen any, fortunately, lately. So sexual abuse, a lot of times when you see this, a lot of people will say, I didn't intend to, or I didn't mean to hurt them, or I love them. But that really doesn't matter. Sexual abuse is sexual abuse, one way or the other. Physical abuse, it ranges from bruises to fractures. It can result from punching, beating. These are the things that we see every single day. Punching, beating, shaking, kicking, biting, throwing. We had somebody just the other day and had bite marks in their back from an adult. So it's not like some of these things you think, surely nobody would bite their own child in the back, but it does happen on a regular basis. Injury considered abuse regardless of whether the caretaker intended to hurt the child or not. Neglect, failure to provide for a child's basic needs. I don't think people realize how often that happens. We had a statement that stated the other day that there was nothing to eat in the house, only water. And so I did do it. So at a certain point, they're doing things sexually for survival needs. And so those things happen right here in our county all the time. So let's talk about just some of the facts. 6.3 million children are referred for help from CPS each year. 1 in 5 children. 1 in 5. We've got 6 of them sitting up here. 1 in 5 children in the U.S. experience some sort of child maltreatment. 1 in 4 girls. I want y'all to really think about this. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18. Change. Yes. And they are increasing as fast as the internet increases. And only 1 in 10 will tell. 8 out of 10 children know who their abuser is. 90% of the time, it's someone in their family circle of friends. More than a third of sexual offenses against children are committed by other minors. And it's estimated that 70% of the children of abused women are also physically abused, and 20% are sexually abused. So what do we do when we're looking for signs of abuse? Signs of abuse are a hard thing to detect, but I want to say to you, when we go through these unexplained injuries, changes in behavior, returning to earlier behaviors, fears of people, changes in eating habits, none of these things that you see here, change in attendance, changes in school performance, lack of personal hygiene, risk-taking, none of these things are big red lights to you. None of these things are things that you're going to walk by and go, oh, you got a red letter on your head today. None of these things or something that you immediately see and recognize. All of these things are little things that start to add up. I saw that here. I heard this over here. I saw that take place. It's those little things that they will tell you to watch. It's those little things, those little changes in your child or your grandchild or your student that start to add up that you realize something is not right. So myths. Linda, do you want to talk about these myths?
I'm just going to hit a few of, and just because I want everybody to understand the myths, because one of the things that a lot of people is children that are being abused will show signs of physical, will show signs of it. Those that are sexually abused, they're not going to show any signs of it. And one of the bad things is when it talks about 1 in 10 will tell with these, and it says that hundreds of innocent men and women have been falsely accused and sent to prison. When a 3-year-old, and I've interviewed a 3-year-old, 4-year-old sits down and can describe a sexual thing that has happened to them from the beginning to the end and have more detail than we as grown people could ever think about having, they're not making that up. It happened. They saw it. And what happens a lot of times when they don't want to tell because they know if it's their dad, family's fixing to get split up. And mom is saying, so when your dad leaves, we're not going to have this, and we're not going to have this, and we're going to be alone, and they may take you away. We see kids recant, which means they come in and tell us what happened, and then they turn around and recant it because they go back, and someone is pressuring them to say, oh, it really didn't happen, I made that up. So normal appearing, well-educated, middle-class people don't molest children. That is a crock of crap. See it every day. Children who are being abused will immediately tell you as their parent. We've had parents in our building crying, what did I miss? Awful. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn it back over to and usually if it's in the family, that's another thing. It doesn't happen once. It happens over and over and over.
Okay. So consent. We're going to talk a little bit about consent. As a noun, I've given this presentation to some of the high schools or the high school at Mineral Wells High School, and it was designed just to speak to, that would be like 13 to 17 years old. And it just to let them know, hey, this is what you're dealing with and what you really need to look at the reality of it. So as a noun, it means it's permission. Consent is permission for something to happen or an agreement to do something. No change may be made without the consent of both parties. Otherwise, it's not consent anymore, okay? As a verb, it means to give that permission for something to happen. So age of consent. Does anybody know the age of consent? I'm hoping one of y'all know the age of consent. Anybody? Okay, it's 17. The age of consent is 17. If you are one day less, 16 and down, and you're almost 17, that's not the age of consent. You have to be 17 years old. Otherwise, you're held liable by law. So the Penal Code, Section 21.11, is indecency with a child. That's where it covers the age of consent. A person who is 16 or below is considered not mature enough to have the proper judgment to consent legally to sexual relations. So the rational, and I try and tell the kids this all the time, it's not that we're hacking on you. It's just that the certain part of your brain that gives consent in that manner is not developed enough to make those decisions. So it's not that, we just don't think that you should be doing at that time. It's just that your brain is not completely developed in order to do that. At 25 is about the time that your brain is completely developed. Now, you can give consent way before then, but it's about 25 before your brain is completely developed. So in teens' brains, the connection, when you see a child, something will happen and they'll be telling you a story of, we were there and then I ran and did this, and then they got all emotional and started to cry. It's that development in their brain, that overwhelming emotional input that they can't think clearly at that time, that later on that will develop and they can not run off of that feeling at the moment. You cannot give consent until you're 17 years of age. If there are 3 more years, this is very important, if there are 3 or more years age difference, which would make that sexual partner 14 years of age or younger, that's against the law. If there are more than 3 years, and I don't know how many times when I was in high school, it was very common for a senior to date a freshman, and it was no big deal. But if there are 3 years or more age difference in those 2 people, it's against the law. And you don't think at the time, you think, her parents love me. Her dad takes me anywhere I want to go. It doesn't matter till it matters. And then there's either one hot mama or one hot daddy, and they've got law enforcement on the phone. That's exactly the way it happens every day. So when that happens, when there are more than 3 years age difference, that's aggravated sexual assault of a child, also known as statutory rape, which really doesn't sound good, does it?
Can I throw something in just real quick, too, along this?
Sure.
If they're 14 years of age or younger, it's aggravated sexual assault. But let's just say that you have a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old. That is, they're juveniles, okay? That 3-year doesn't exist. But like Cherie said, it's very hard for people to understand, but what they try to do, if it's we've had many 19-year-old boys that have had sexual relations with 15-year-old girls, and the girl tells the story, but then, well, I didn't realize he was going to get in trouble. Well, he is going to get in trouble. He's going to get arrested, and he's going to be a registered sex offender. So, you talk to your boys, and then you talk to them again, because, like Cherie said, they will be labeled. And our people are good. Our law enforcement around here is good, and they don't like people messing with kids.
So ignorance of the law or mistake of the law is no defense. So you can't do, I know, when my kids went to school, we had a couple of kids that just said, I didn't know she was 13. I didn't know he was 19. That is no defense. They will still prosecute. So sexting. Today, sexting is like a given. It's more like texting, but pictures. As often as we all text, they sext. And it's not considered a big deal. We had a little girl the other day that just said, yeah, I sent him a picture. I mean, it's no big deal to them. Their bodies are not, they're not that concerned about sending those pictures anymore. They've labeled the names of those pictures, and it's used on a daily basis. Children ages 8 to 17 are spending more than 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen. 75 to 80% of 13 to 7-year-olds have already sexted. Your kids are already sexting. 61% of teen girls are sexting, and they said that they did so because they were pressured. Sexting laws were created for the juveniles who were violating child pornography laws. So, before you hit that send button, you need to think about it. Sure.
I've got a bunch of the new laws, and I told Cherie we didn't have time to put them in the deal, but in September the 1st, a bunch of laws came into being, and Texas did not have any laws that dealt with this kind of thing with kids. It all fell under child pornography. So what they did, they made some laws, and so one of them is right now, if it's a sexting law, actually. And if you're caught with any kind of pics on your phone, whether it's, I just sent a picture of my boobs to my boyfriend, if that's found on a phone, right now it's a Class C misdemeanor and it's a $500 fine. Right there, immediate. Where before, it went into the child pornography. So we see it all the time, and the story Cherie told about the little girl. I was interviewing a little 10-year-old one time, and one of the questions we have to ask is, well, you know, have you ever seen any pictures? Anybody seen any pictures? Do you? Et cetera, et cetera. And she looked at me like I was the stupidest old lady you've ever met. And it was just like, well, yeah, duh. We do it all the time. But it was just to my boyfriend, right? Locker room, talk. They're shaking their heads.
Yeah. So this is how it all gets started. It's just usually on, just hanging out, kind of texting each other. The issue with sexting is that the pictures that you send don't always stay with the person that you sent them to. Typically, you're in a relationship. Sometimes you're not quite in a relationship yet, that you decide to send some of those pics over, and they don't stay with the people that you thought that said, I promise you, I'm not going to send that to anybody else. 25% of teens have received sexting clips and have sent it on to at least 4 other people without your consent. So your picture's hitting that phone, and then it's being shot out to 4 more people. You might think sexting is just a harmless way to flirt, but one thing I think you need to think about these is when you click that send button, whether it's on one of your apps, Instagram, or wherever you're sending it just through text messages, when you release that information, you have no clue where it's going. That's what they turn into child pornography, because it will get in the hands of someone who can market it. That's what they're going to do with it. It's money. Because of all the internet and fax to text being shared all over the world, sexting often turns into child pornography. Can I get in trouble over it? This is a little bit of what Linda was talking about. House Bill 2789. I think it's Governor Greg Abbott just put into this law in effect on September 1. Offenses including visual material that depicts a person engaging in sexual conduct with that person's intimate parts exposed or covered genitals of a male person that are discernibly turgid state. That is against the law. What does that mean? It's creating, sending, or receiving lewd images such as those containing nudity, sexual acts via text message, social media, online dating apps will be a Class C misdemeanor, punishable by up to a $500 fine. Now, I would want to say to you, $500 fine is the least of your problems, because your image is going everywhere. Everywhere. It's going to the Ukraine, it's going to the Orient, it's going everywhere, because that is money. This also includes pictures of yourself when you're like, it was just a picture of me. It wasn't a picture of my girlfriend or my friend. It's just a picture of myself I sent to them. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. So let's talk a little bit about the internet. There are 3 different levels of the internet. The surface web, which is the one that we all use to purchase on Amazon or do, all our online things on a regular daily basis that we do when we're looking and shopping. And then there's what they call the deep web. The deep web are the pages that you have to use your own password, your own username and password in order to get in. And then there's what they call the dark web. The dark web is a network of untraceable online websites on the internet. They can't be found using search engines. These are the ones that they're using to, lots of people in different places keep their web hidden. These are the ones that they are using to, hold on, let me go back. These are the ones that they're using to purchase guns and drugs and hookups or sex pictures or pornography or whatever. It's that dark web that they use, and you have to get on a whole different place and log into certain avenues. Don't know anything about it. Don't really want to know anything about it. Go ahead, Linda.
But every year we go to a place called Crimes Against Children, and the whole thing, all it is law enforcement and people like us that are there, and we go through all these classes. Well, one of the classes that I went to was on the dark web, and one of the guys that was talking about it, what they do is they have untraceable IP addresses. Now, the only way they can be untraceable IP addresses is just to keep moving all the time. So what they do is they send out messages to people, and they say they use their computer as like a pass-through. So they'll use this computer, then they go to the next computer, and they make this whole circle, and all this information is hopping from one IP address to the other IP address. And this is where they go on and they use bitcoins. Any of y'all know what a bitcoin is? See? Look at them. They sell bitcoins, and bitcoins are what they use to buy porn. They use it to buy anything on the dark web. Now, these kids know what bitcoins is, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but because I don't know how you know about a bitcoin. Tell me how you know about a bitcoin. Dark web. And the dark web is what the cops will tell you. It's like you peel an onion, and the more you peel, and the more you peel, it's just the more you find because you can't get to the end of it. So it's a really scary thing, and kids don't even know sometimes that their information is going there. So if you hear anything about bitcoins, it's not that they're bad people. They've just heard about it. But it's not a great place for them to end up.
The dark web is the most wanted type of content is child pornography, black market goods such as drugs and purchase of guns. It's also used for hiding online activity like finance, hacking, abuse, and fraud. I want to go back one here to, we were talking about Governor Abbott's law that he put into effect. When he did that, he made this statement. He stated, many people, especially women, get unwanted sexually explicit pictures by text or social media. It's disgusting. And now it's against the law. So he's working for us. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, here we go. So this study was done in by the Child Mind Institute. I know that all our kids are loving Fortnite. There's probably not anybody that doesn't love Fortnite. She doesn't love Fortnite. Go for her. She doesn't love Fortnite, but, you know, it is interesting, and it's a fun game, and they all like to play it. The problem with that is that with this game in particular and others, many, many others just like it, that they can track your child within about 3 feet of where they're standing. So I try and tell people often, if somebody knocked on your door tonight and said, hey, can I come into your 10-year-old daughter's bedroom? You'd get the gun. But every night, a 30 to 50-year-old pedophile is walking straight in. He's in the bedroom, and he's having plenty of conversation. And he's doing it through games and apps. It's just flooded with pedophiles. So what are they saying about Fortnite? They're obsessed by this game. If you'll look at some of these comments, kids are developing behavior around the game that could get them into trouble. The near misses are tantalizing in the game. Almost feels like gambling or slot machines. The game is almost hypnotic. Tearing them away from it is becoming an issue. It's almost like a drug in itself. It is it just has a drawing thing to it, and it's very competitive, and they love it. So what you want to do is go in and look at your private settings, your privacy settings. When you go in, there will be ways for you to disable the chat function on them. I know Linda's, poor Wes over here, he has his disabled.
I wasn't going to embarrass him, but I'm going to embarrass him just a little bit because he has Fortnite, and some of his buds can talk, and he can hear them talk on his, but we have some controls but poor Weston can't talk on it, so he has a really good bud that he plays Fortnite with, and when he does, I'm sorry, he gets James's cell phone, so the kid's talking to him from the TV, but Weston has to talk to him with the telephone. So, I mean, and poor thing, he thinks I'm never going to allow him to have a cell phone or anything, probably for the rest of his life, but it's just what we do every day, so.
It is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. Because what happens is every pedophile or person looking for your child, either to traffic them or to make contact with them, is going to use these kind of social media apps and these kind of games to go in and make a connection with it. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about how a pedophile grooms a child, and they're going to be doing it in person, and they're going to be doing it over the internet in just about the same way. Okay, so your social media apps, we all use them. We all think they're great. I love to watch my kids. Everybody loves to see their child on there doing funny things. But some of the things you want to look at, I can promise you this Snapchat and this Facebook and Twitter, my husband loves Twitter. Some of these things, Instagram, we use them on a daily basis. And your kids use them, probably not Facebook, that's for the older people, but this Instagram is extremely hot with them. When they get on there and they flood those markets, where do you think the pedophile is going? He's going there. That's where they are. That's where he's going. Him or her. It's about money. It's about gratification and money, and they're going to go where your child has access to go. Some of these apps that you really need to get on your kid's phone and look for is this one right here. This one called Omegle. I'm going to read you a little bit about Omegle here. You don't have to register to get on Omegle. They call you when you get on Omegle Stranger 1 and Stranger 2. So you have no clue who you're talking to. It's live video, and when you have open feed of someone in Pakistan live videoing to your child in Santo, Texas, in their bedroom, it's a problem. Because I can promise you what's coming across is live sexual favors or actions or lewd, disgusting. Those things are coming through on a regular basis. The kids actually probably, if your kid has been on this app, they probably have to try and avoid them. It's so flooded. This Omegle is so flooded with it that when you register on there, it tells you that there will be the possibility of pedophiles or that type of person on there. So when you go to look at it and it tells you right off the bat, hey, here you go, here's where the pedophiles are, you might want to just make sure that your child doesn't have that on their phone. It's being replaced right now by this app right up here called Chat Random. Again, it's live video stream, and it is the newest, most disgusting app that your child could be on. So you want to look for some of these things. Look at this little thing I have right here. This is called a Vault app. And what you use that for, and I hate for your kids to hear all this, what you use that for is to hide anything else you don't want your parents to see when they pick up your telephone. You can put live videos, you can put pictures, you can put whatever you want. This app in particular, whenever somebody tries to open it up, if they don't know the correct code to put in, it sends them an alarm by email saying, hey, somebody's trying to get into your Vault app. So don't try that. When you see this app on your child's phone, there's several different Vault apps. There's also one called Calculator Plus. It looks just like the calculator that comes on your Apple iPhone, but it says it's Calculator Plus. You have to punch in a sequence in order to get it open, and it too is just a Vault app to hide secret things in that you don't want anybody to be able to see. So, and when you see it, if you look at your child's phone and they have two calculators, hello, yeah, don't want to have two calculators on there, yeah. Oh, and on the back of your handout, we've given y'all a handout on the very back, and it has a bunch of these apps on them. And I would just say to y'all, get your child's phone and then get on the internet and start Googling what these are about, because they'll tell you straight up. And they have some parents groups that are constantly go in and look at them and rate them and talk to you about what the real issues are on them. So I would say get on there. This new Meet Me app is becoming a real issue here as well. A lot of them, this Grindr app here, Grindr, today, Grindr proudly represents a modern LGBTQ lifestyle that's expanding into new platforms. Forms social issues to original content, we're continuing to blaze innovative pathways with a meaningful impact for our community. At Grindr, we've created a safe place where you can discover, navigate, and get 0 feet away from the world around you. So that's Grindr there for you. So what you want to do is look at your app's website and get the safety tips on those. Everybody, every parent should get their child's phone out and look at every app and Google it and see what they're working with on a regular basis. Understand the signs of grooming. Okay, I think that everybody needs to know there are people grooming your child on a daily basis in your community. You're just unaware of it, okay? So, what does that look like? Again, it's those little things that you're going to have to pick up on. A pedophile has, I'm telling you, when we go to Dallas Crimes Children Conference, Linda sends us over there every year, and they will sit down and tell us the pedophiles now have an association that they sit down and teach each other, and some of them top the other one, and they want to bring that to the forefront. And so this now is what you need to try and look for. It's those little radars that you just need to go, hey, something is not right with that. Targeting the child that they see accessible. They're not looking for helicopter mama's child. I can promise you that. So helicopter mom is not a bad thing, okay? They need someone that is accessible to them. They need somebody who's left behind. They need somebody who doesn't have a ride. They need somebody who doesn't have the self-esteem. They need a child that can easily be separated from the rest of the crowd. They gain the trust of that child, and then they start to get access of a child. And I can promise you this. We had one in particular where parents drove in a parking lot, let their child out. Pedophile walks out. Thank you so much for bringing your child. They're going to have a great time with my kid as well. Parents were like, thank you so much for having them. Can I help pay for pizza? You know, I know y'all are going to spend a week together. We just really appreciate. Not at all. My kids are in there, and they're going to have a really good time. Shut the door. Parents drove away. A week's worth of toys and disgusting lewd items came along with him, and he intended to use every single one of them on that child. And he did. Gaining the trust and access to that child, and that's how it works. They do it not in person. They don't have to do it in person. They're talking to them on Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and all those things on a regular basis, and it starts with a tiny little chat, and then it moves forward. So once he gets that access, and I'm telling you, a pedophile is probably one of the bravest things that I've seen, and just learning about this, they will walk straight up to you and ask you for your kid in a manner that you think, okay, all right, and you'll let them go. So they'll start to play a role in the child's life. When they do that and they create that relationship and the parent realizes or doesn't realize and they allow them to start to play some kind of role, even on the internet and when they connect with them, they start to separate them in a manner that they think, hey, it's me and you, baby, forever. We're in love. We're going to get married. I'm going to send you some jewelry. You said you didn't have enough clothing. I'm going to send you that over too. Those kids get that. They start to get that self-esteem feeling that they, before nobody's paying attention to them. They're lacking clothing. They're lacking things at the house. A lot of them have done it just for technology pieces. You know, phones come and go in the mail all the time in order to create those relationships. And then they start to isolate the child from others. They can do that on the internet. Hey, baby, it's just me and you. We're going to be together. I love you. I will protect you. I'll provide for you. I will flourish you with all the kinds of things that you don't have They will tell them anything they can do just to get their clothes off of them. Create secrecy around the relationship with the child. The next thing you know, after they've done some of those things, they'll start to tell them, hey, don't tell anybody about this, or you'll get in trouble, or I'll get in trouble, or they'll cut us off, or then I won't be able to send you any jewelry, or I won't be able to send you any clothes, or, that new phone. If you tell somebody about it, I'm going to take it back away from you. And then they initiate the sexual contact with the child. I can promise you this, they will get a bus ticket straight in here. And they can track your child, did I tell you a while ago? They can track your child within 3 feet. That's at the football game. That's at the grocery store. That's at your friend's house. That's in your bedroom. They can track your child, and they will meet your child somewhere, even if your child didn't realize it. If they've made some kind of contact and that pedophile is looking to move that direction and feels like he can get away with it, he'll be here and at your corner before you know it and have some kind of contact with your child. Then they start to control the relationship with threats to the child, and that's how they secure that whole thing. They start to threaten the child. If you tell, we had someone the other day just afraid to tell simply because, and we hear this over and over and over again, they'll make me leave my family. Even when that child is receiving abuse in those ways, their biggest fear is having to leave the family, even if it's abusive family. So trafficking in Palo Pinto County, what is that going to look like for us? The Attorney General's office stated that there are 79,000 victims of youth and minor sex trafficking in Texas at any given time. It's not just coming across the border. That's not where this is coming from. In rural America, exactly where these things want to take places. We have such wide open spaces. I know that we have a store that's close by that there's constantly large vehicles moving in and out at any given moment. I can promise you they are coming and going, and they're purchasing while they're there. So those places, we have small law enforcement, and we have wide open spaces. What better place for them to be? As a parent, you need to be aware that sexting, cyberbullying, and solicitation has gone through the roof in your social media. That's on your Facebook, and it's on your Instagram and your Snapchat. It's just not Omegle. 50% of teens feel they are addicted to their phones. So this is what they're doing, what they're already hooked to. 72% of teens feel like they need to immediately respond to their text messages when they get them. Children and young adults are being sold right out of their homes. So in Palo Pinto County, what's happening are children are being sold either for sex or other things right out of their homes by their parents or other family members. And they do it for money or for gain, or the child does it for basic needs. And again, I would just want to stress to you, that's your neighborhood. That's what's happened to the kids where you live. That's not happened to the kids in Fort Worth. That's in Palo Pinto County. What comes across my desk and Linda reads every day is that they're selling them, their parents are selling them right out of their home. So we tell the schools, when we go to the schools and we talk to the teachers, we tell them all the time, if you see a child come in here and they have one phone this day and 2 days later they have another phone and just a little bit later they pop in with a new computer, MacBook or whatever, those are the things that's going to add up. Sooner or later you're thinking, something's not right here. Something is not right. Because it's those things that they use to gain that access.
Over the last 2 weeks, we've probably done, or will do by the end of the week, 5 different interviews on trafficking.
Let me go back here. I want to say this one more time to y'all. Look at this right here. When a child is doing something for food, we got problems. And we're all intelligent people. It's those little things that we're going to have to start picking up on and realizing that we're allowing it to come in to our home in a disguise that we weren't aware of, which is social media. Okay, so without treatment, abused children are 50 times more likely to abuse alcohol and drugs. Well, we know that's happening. We see it every single day. Y'all see it as well. And that's how they get there. 59% more likely to be arrested as juveniles. 6 times more likely to commit suicide. And they suffer long-term effects. Well, this is what our teachers are dealing with on a daily basis. Depression, self-mutilation. We get more cutting cases where children are cutting themselves over their own home environment. It's what happens in their home on a daily basis that they start to cut themselves. Self-blame, anger, hostility, vulnerability. And I don't know why it is, and we study this a lot, children who have been victimized are re-victimized over and over again. It's almost like they put some kind of thing on them, some kind of banner that says, I'm a target. But for some reason, if a child is even as young as like 3 or 4, where they didn't even remember it, it'll pop up again and they'll be re-victimized as they get older. It's, who knows why it is, but it is definitely a factor. So, you are a vital part of this county's Children's Advocacy Center. Your circle of influence, and each one of you knows somebody else, and they know somebody else. And anybody that your circle of friends or you can get us in front of to talk to them about these issues and just educate them on what their kids are doing and how it's getting into their homes and your homes, we would be happy to do. Because this is your county's Children's Advocacy Center. This is not ours, and it wasn't put here by our state. It was put in effect here by the people of this county, and it's maintained by the people of this county.
And I want to share, I think we've got just a few minutes, but I think one of the things that helps bring it home is to tell some stories that, you know, the examples we've given have all been around here. But one case that happened at about 4 years ago, and I hope some of you saw it in the newspapers, but it was probably one of the worst things that I've ever been through, and it was one of our grooming cases. And it was a man who lived out at Country Club Estates in Mineral Wells, and there were a lot of women out there that were single moms, and this man used to volunteer to babysit these kids, and all of them were boys. And they were boys from the age of about 3, 4, 5, and 6. He babysat them. He took them fishing. He took them hunting. He had four-wheelers. He did everything that these boys didn't have. And this went on for months. And then what happened was he started sexually abusing the boys. And finally, one of the boys talked. So these little boys came into the center. They did interviews with us. They went out and got the guy. This is a happy ending, I'm going to tell you. They went out and got the man. He stood trial. But those little boys who were at this time during the trial were probably in 1st and 3rd grade, the 2 that were going to testify. They have a right, or this man had a right to look at them, you know, in the courtroom. These little boys stood up on the stand and told everybody in that courtroom what he had done to them. And it was in detail. The very last thing the little boy said when he was finishing, he said, "But I love him." I had held it together until that happened, but when he said he loved that man, because of all the things he had done for him. Now, I will tell you, thanks to your district attorney, he got like 5 99-year sentences, boom, to boom, to boom, to boom. Mm-hmm. And he will never, ever see the light of day, but he has ruined the lives of those people, the mothers that just said, "I didn't know." So that's one of
We've also had recently 2 little girls who came in. They were like 4 and 5. They were in foster care here, and they just came out of Granbury, and their mother had sold them, had sex trafficked them to another gentleman, and by the time they got here into foster care, both of them had venereal diseases. at 4 and 5. So the other thing that I kind of want to mention to y'all too, we had a girl meet somebody on the internet from another state, New Hampshire, way up, convinced her mom that he was the greatest guy, brought him into the home. He sexually molested the daughter that night, packed his bags, moved back on. And they have pulled him back. I think he's in the jailhouse now. He's in the jailhouse now. But